Hello, welcome. Today I would like to continue reading from The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. It's said to be the most widely read devotional of all time. It's very beautiful. I heard of it maybe 25, 30 years ago. But it wasn't until very recently, within the past 3-4 months, that I actually read some of it, and I saw just how good it is. Well, let me read this to you. He who knoweth things as they are and not as they are said or seem to be is truly wise, and is taught of God more than of men. See, when you were a little child, all of these things, something like this devotional here, the Bible, a devotional. Basically what they can do is perhaps awaken you to what you know in your heart, or to remind you of what you already know. See? Awaken you or remind you. See, you knew this when you were a little child. When you were a little tiny child, you already knew this. You've always known this. When you were a little child, you saw things. You saw good people. You saw when people were being mean. See, sometimes little children even know things beyond the ordinary. They know there's another realm, beautiful realm or a scary one. But mainly, they see things. They see when somebody is being mean, or when somebody's being unfair. And they see when someone's being kind. How do they know? They just know. They know in their heart. And they know when they did something wrong too, like if they got angry at their mommy and they had bad thoughts about mommy, then they felt bad, didn't they? Or didn't you? So you knew in your heart what was right. Now all you would have had to do is just abide with that. Trust in it. Be grateful for it. It's like health. How many of you know that you take health for granted? We tend to take health for granted, don't we? We go about our daily activities, and we just take health for granted. And then all of a sudden, when we're not feeling well, when we get sick, then we think back to how it was and how wonderful it was to be healthy. And then we're grateful for it, wish to have it back. Well, when you were a little child, you saw things. Without words, you just knew. And you thought you would always have that. See? And you thought that everyone had that, which they do, but they forget. See, when people become angry, when they become emotional, when they become upset, when they make something too important, more important than what's right, when they make being popular more important, see, or getting something more important, and they forget what they know in their heart. And you wondered how people could forget. How could Daddy become angry so easily? How could he forget my birthday? How could Mommy yell at me like she did? How could people be mean? Everybody knows that being kind is the way to be. See? You couldn't understand how other people could not know. See? Well, all you had to do was just stick with that. Just stay with that. That very simple seeing, clear seeing. And it would have guided you through your whole life, all the way to salvation. All the way to eternal life. See? But what you did was, you fell away from it. But like I said, you didn't want to. You didn't know what you were falling away from. See? And you didn't know that getting angry, resenting and hating people, wanting something too much, making popularity too important, you didn't know that those things would interfere with what you know in your heart. So, back to this. It says here, he who knoweth things as they are, and not as they are said or seem to be. So now here's the thing, is taught of God more than of men. So the little child is taught of God. How is a little child taught of God? The little child knows in its heart. It's a wordless language. The language of God is intuition. It's wordless. Okay? You just see. You see what you see. And you know. And that's from God. See? It's called intuition, conscience, common sense, realization. See? So all he's doing is reminding you of what you already know, what you knew when you were a little child. Now listen to this. He who knoweth how to walk from within, and set little value upon outward things, requireth not places, nor waited for seasons, for holding his intercourse with God. It says he, in other words, the person who knows how to walk from within, to be inwardly impelled. Because what you know in your heart, see, it has to then be, it becomes then, for it to be complete, it has to become a motivating factor. You know what's right, and then you do what's right. You see what's right, and you cling to that and don't doubt it. See? So you know not to hate other people, and so you don't hate them. You just know, and you don't doubt it. See? That's knowing and doing. And you trust what you know in your heart. See? Just as when you were a little child, you could see injustice. A parent was being nicer to one child than to another child. You saw it was unjust. You saw one child was being dumped on for no reason, and another child was getting away with something. You saw it, didn't you? You knew that wasn't right. Well, that same kind of knowing, that same kind of basic knowing, wordless knowing, seeing, can lead you to become what you were meant to be, to a safe life, a good life, a walk with God. That's where it is. People like Jeremiah, Enoch, Moses, Daniel, Paul. These people, all they did was just do what the little child does. It sees what it sees and knows what it knows. And they didn't doubt it. They stayed with it. And then as adults, we call that walking with God. Trusting what they know in their heart and not doubting it. Okay? And it says that that person then who moves like the wind, see, one way or another way, blown by the wind of the Spirit. You don't need an excuse to move or rationale. You just move. You just see and move. One step and then another step and another step. Years later you look back and say, how did all this come to pass? All this good stuff came to pass. How did it happen? All I did was take one step at a time. But you took the one step at a time based upon what your conscience, what you were either moved to do or what you saw not to do. You saw not to go that way. Everybody else was going that way, but somehow you just saw that wasn't the way, and so you didn't go that way. They ended up having problems, and you didn't, because you trusted what you knew in your heart. So it said that person then doesn't need time or place to call upon God, or to pray with God, or to sense God's presence. See, it's like Brother Lawrence said in his book, Practicing the Presence of Christ. Brother Lawrence said, well, he said, there are certain, he was I believe he was a monk. He was in a monastery. And there were certain times of the day that they had to pray. So he went through the motions, you know, at the time of day. But he said basically he was praying all the time. He was always in God's presence. He was always delicately calling upon God, always delicately checking with his intuition, following what was right. That's what he did all the time. Didn't need a special time to pray, because he always was praying. Like Paul said, pray unceasingly. The inward person, it says here the inward man, but I want to update it, use more up-to-date language, so everyone is included, men and women, of course. The inward person quickly recollects himself or herself, because he or she is never entirely given up to outward things. So the person is never entirely gets lost in anything. Lost in music, not lost in a ball game, not lost in a television, not lost in food. Always the person bears in mind that delicate intuition. Always delicately wanting to do the right thing. It's just very delicate. It's effortless. It just is aware that it's there. Okay? And doesn't permit himself or herself to get pulled into it, because when you get pulled in, you forget. Remember we said that when you were a little child, you knew, like this stuff, you knew this. You knew what injustice was, when somebody was being nice, when somebody was being mean, when somebody was being unfair, you saw that. And when you were unfair, you knew it in your heart, didn't you? Or when you were angry, you knew it. It wasn't right to be angry. See? So you knew all of that. So how did you forget it? Well, remember I said if you became upset or emotional, too angry, resentful toward other people, or want something too much, then you forget what you know in your heart. But there's another way you forget, and it's by getting lost in things. When you get lost in a TV program, you forget what you know in your heart. If you're playing tennis and you get lost in the tennis game, and you make the tennis game too important, see, then you can forget about friendship, sportsmanship, forget that it's just a game, forget what's really important in life, and get caught up in it, you see. So, yeah, this is good stuff, but it's what you, like I said, it's what you already know. When you were a little tiny child, if you could understand language, you know, like when you were maybe 2 years old or 3, and I said that you know, when you get angry and think bad thoughts about your mommy, for example, do you know that that's not good or right? And you would say, I know, you would know that. So I say, well, then the best thing is just to let those thoughts go then. Let them go. If you have an angry thought, just let it go. See, as a little child, you understood, didn't you? Of course you did. And when you were a little child, if I said, now, you were playing that game and you got caught up in it, and then you got angry at the other team for winning, and what happened? Did you forget what you know in your heart? And the little child would say, yes, I forgot. See? So you knew all this. Well, all Thomas à Kempis is doing here is reminding you what you already know. So basically all you have to do is, once again, refine that inner ground of good, your intuition, what you know in your heart, and then just abide with it forever, every day, every moment. It's not something you can, see, don't try, because if you try, see, making a goal, that's also making something more important than what's right. And just delicately remind yourself, how do you do that? Well, here's the way, here's the secret. The meditation that I have. Get the meditation, learn to practice it. So you learn how to stand back a little bit from being lost in thought. See? The intermediary between being lost in something out there, lost in the ball game, lost in getting upset, lost in food, lost in TV, lost in music, lost in anything. The intermediate between those is your thoughts and imagination, where you get lost. See? So you just have to learn to stand back from it and from everything. Have a little distance. Take that little bit of distance out in the world. Now here's the beautiful part. Now, see, when you go out in the world and all of a sudden you find yourself getting lost in some music, you notice it. Or something makes you to notice. It's your intuition from God. It just makes you to notice that you're lost in it, and then you're no longer lost in it. Or somebody's pulling you into an argument. You know how people can somehow draw you in. Then you notice it and you stand back, and now you're not lost in the argument anymore, but something made you to notice. So when you refine this inner ground, what you know in your heart, it will remind you, wordlessly. You just suddenly realize that you were getting a little caught up in something. Caught up in food, caught up in planning, scheming, caught up in worrying, caught up in reliving the past, caught up in music or entertainment or making something too important. See? It will remind you all of a sudden. You'll see that you are, and then the moment that you see that you're lost in it, then you're no longer lost in it. And then you'll have that forever. It's a gift from God. It's called awareness. See? It's an ever-present help. An ever-present help. My name is Roland.